Welcome back to Dr. Skull Games, formerly known as Tiny Grimes Games. And today I wanted to bring you the first deck that I've really been liking in the new card game Star Wars Unlimited. Now, let's be clear, this game is not out yet. It won't be out till, I don't know, who knows when, perhaps March. But that hasn't stopped me from playing on the Tabletop Simulator. I am really liking this game a lot. I'll put out a video later about sort of the nuts and bolts. But think of it as like a mix of Hearthstone with an action economy, with a much more nuanced mana / resource system, and this cool leader feature. But let's get into this deck. No surprise here, I'm looking at a Vader deck, and I'm calling this my favorite deck. But if you know anything about me and my channels before this, it means that I think it's super powerful. Now, admittedly, it's so strong because a lot of the cards are released for these colors and not necessarily for others. And if you want to see gameplay of this, I'm going to link to Tower Number 9's channel. He recorded me playing 2 games of this, and it really was exactly how this deck is supposed to function. So, what we're looking at is a Vader ramp deck, and it starts with, shocker, Darth Vader. I love playing Darth Vader in games, so I immediately gravitated to him, and he's incredibly powerful. He is a leader that when he's in his passive state, just chilling, leading, whenever you play a card from this deck, they're all Imperials, you can then follow up by doing a damage. Now, if you've ever played a game like Hearthstone, and it's like the trade doesn't quite work, and it just destroys you because the board then slips away because everything has 1 health left and you couldn't quite make the trades you needed, well, Vader cleans up the mess. So now you don't have to trade perfectly. Vader's always there to help you out. It makes him incredibly powerful. And then on his flip side, which you can't actually see here, he is actually a person that goes on the board, a character, whatever they're called, a unit, and he does a lot of damage. He's a 5/8 who also, when he attacks, you can just do 2 damage to a unit, once again being able to clean up those trades. And so this deck is all about putting out units early that may not trade fair, and then Vader helps you clean them up, delaying you to the big baddies, which would make this deck so fun. And then it plays green, because you'll see why. Green has a lot of the ramping cards. So we're going to start with what makes this deck tick, which is essentially this: ramp. On turn 7, theoretically, is when you get Vader out. But when you start playing this game, you realize the leaders are super, super powerful in this game. And so the goal is get this leader out fast. That way on turn 7, or on like turn 5 actually, you can end up flipping him and then still have the mana left. So you have Vader and 7 mana, which you can do some really disgusting things. So how are we getting him out early? All right, so the first thing is we've got the Super Laser Technician. This guy doesn't look very impressive. He's 3 costs. He's only a 2/1. But when he's died, when he's defeated, he gets put into play as a ready resource. So in other words, you can play Vader on turn when you would be able to only do it with 6 mana. It's weird saying the turns because you get 2 at the start, so it's on turn 5 instead of turn 6. And then there's another card that looks terrible to a lot of people. This card down here, Resupply. I've seen a lot of people say, like, this card's garbage. It's a terrible card. It costs you 3, and all you get to do is bump up a resource. Now, I've played card games. A lot of times ramp decks can be ridiculously strong, and this game is a very weird one where you're not just ramping to like hoping I draw big things or like maybe it'll work out. No, you know you're getting your leader a turn early. So a card like this is incredibly powerful in a deck like this that is designed to exploit it. In other words, survive the early game, and then play your big guys earlier. Now, you might be thinking, well, what happens if you draw it late game? No problem. Just put it down as a resource. In the video you're going to watch with the gameplay, I saved this for turn 5. It did not look like my Vader was coming out. They played their Luke, all happy, everything's great. He's going to be uncontested for a turn. I was able to stall, wait till they attacked with Luke, and then I was like, oh, by the way, resupply, Vader, and just was able to completely swing the game. Okay, so we've got the crux of the deck. We've got Vader. We've got these ramp cards. What are we going to do with them? Well, let's start with the units. We'll go down one by one. So the Death Star Stormtrooper is not impressive. He's just a regular old 1-cost guy. But guess what? in this game where you start with 2 resources, it means you get to play Death Star Trooper and a Vader ping right from the first turn. Rather powerful. And it's one of these cards where we want it early to delay so that we can get to our big stuff. And if we get it later, whatever, we just resource it. It's fine. That's what makes this game so cool, is that like there are no dead cards. You can always just play them as resources. So the Snowtrooper Lieutenant is essentially the same thing. If I get him early, I play him. Get him late, resource. Cell Block Guard is a card that really shines in a deck like this. He has Sentinel, Taunt, whatever you want to call it from another game. In other words, they have to attack this guy, not the base. So now we're just delaying until we get to the bigger guys. Emperor's Royal Guard is similar as well. You might not always have Sentinel, but we're going to look at the next guy, Veers, who sets him up. He has the official that the Emperor's Royal Guard needs to become Sentinel. And then he also has this incredible power as all Imperials get +1/+1 other than him. So it's a really strong card for only 3. Again, we're just making these trades better in the early game. That's what we're trying to do, is survive the early game. And then Tarkin is this incredible card where the more that I've played this, the more I realize it's about card advantage, especially if you're playing any sort of long deck. And this guy gives you not just a little card advantage, massive card advantage. You get a body that you use to stall, and then you search the top 5 cards and you get whatever you need. Are you having troubles in the early game and you need to go get a Cell Block Guard to kind of stabilize? A Cell Block Guard, remember, has the taunt ability. Or are you getting a big bopper and you're like, oh, I've stabilized, I'm getting Palpatine, I'm getting a Death Star Destroyer, I'm getting a removal card, which is crazy that you can just grab the Imperial events. So he's really, really strong. This card is not supposed to be in there. This is the wrong card. It's supposed to be the other ATST. But I think this is a really great point. That ATST costs 6, and it's also not good. It's a filler card. This is the problem with having a small card pool. I think this particular card is just way too slow. The point for this deck is that it is trying to win, but it's trying to use the 8 cost range to really wipe out the opponent. And I don't think Blizzard Assault ATST or AT-AT does that, and the ATST doesn't either. So just know that that is a filler card. There's only 2 of it for a reason, and it's not great. Hopefully it'll get replaced. Here's one of the big baddies we are trying to ramp to. Palpatine. Young Skywalker. This dude is amazing. He is a 6/6, whatever. His numbers are almost irrelevant. He is a removal card. You play him, you wipe out much of their army. Maybe you followed up with another removal card that actually uses him that we'll see in a bit. But in other words, if you get to 8-ish and you're have enough health on your base left. By the way, remember, in card games, life is a resource. When I was playing these games that were recorded, the person doing commentary was worried about my life total. I was never once worried about my life total. I was like, whatever, it's a resource. It's not at 0, is it? It's, in fact, nowhere near 0. But Palpatine, you ramp to him, and then you slaughter them. You play him, and he does 6 damage. Okay, so those are the ground units. Let's move over to space. Again, we have a very unimpressive 1-cost card, but it's just a staller. It lets you ping with Vader easily. Now we get to some really good stuff. Hopefully you've noticed by now that this deck is full of cards that do things, right? They either do things when they come into play, they provide a static effect like Veers, they draw cards. This card comes in and it does 3 damage to another space unit. Once again, delaying the board state until we can stabilize. The TIE Advance comes in, gives 2 experience tokens. The thing that I have noticed most about this game so far is that leaders are critical. Much of the removal cannot target them. They come in, and then you have 7 mana, so you can do absurd things like play Vader, play a TIE Advance, and now suddenly Vader has a 7/10 and like this unkillable beast. So this is an incredibly strong card. Gladiator Star Destroyer, I heard some people talking about this recently, saying they thought it was a bad card. The stats aren't that impressive. Who cares if you get Sentinel? But in a deck like this, where it's a ramp deck, and you're feasibly playing this on turn 4 instead of turn 5 when you normally would, maybe you just have out like Tarkin from last turn. You got this with Tarkin, and then the next turn you went, I'll play Star Destroyer. I'll give Tarkin Sentinel, or Taunt, as you may know it as. Now you can't get through. And now I'm buying yet another turn, and I have this big beefy guy in the space arena. So in a regular deck, this probably isn't that great, but in this ramp deck where we are trying to go big, this is amazing. All right, the Relentless. It costs 9. It's amazing. If you get this out there, you've probably already won the game. I'm going to be honest, I've never actually played this with any impact. I used to be running 3 of it. I've cut it down to 1, just kind of because whatever. There's not really enough cards to run at this point in the game. I kind of doubt I'm going to end up playing it, or I'll end up playing 3 if ramp decks become the thing and I have to go over the top of them. But right now, everyone's playing either mid-range or rush decks, and so a card like this ends up coming out once the game has been won already. And for that reason, it's just better to have that other card at only 6. This is doing essentially the same thing, except for the Gladiator is better and cheaper. Okay, now let's move on to the things that I think make this deck really shine. Removal cards. All right, first we've got Open Fire. Good card. Does 4 damage to a unit for 3. That is good. Again, in addition to trying to stall, trying to have impactful cards, we also are going for card advantage and clean kills with big damage, right? So 3 for 4 damage is normally going to do a clean kill, and if it doesn't, Vader will finish it off. We don't have to use 2 cards, or we end up using this and like Vader's ping to destroy something, but it's a very powerful and helpful card. Okay, next removal. Notice, an Imperial card, by the way. We can fetch this with Tarkin. This card lets us do massive damage. Like if we have Vader on the board, or Palpatine, or some combination, it does a lot of damage. And what's so great, like I talked about already, you play Vader, then you play this, boom, that's 5 damage, plus whatever else you have on. So Vader plus stuff kills a lot of things, like Luke has a hard time living. And then I think my favorite card of all is Overwhelming Barrage. It is not Imperial. So it's important to remember that. You can't actually fetch that. I think that's one of the reasons why I did 3 Firepowers and only 2 Barrages. This card's insane. Like, paired with anything big from this deck, it is just completely backbreaking, right? Like, you ramped into some big stuff, and they're like, okay, I got my Obi-Wan out, or I got this guy out, and it's going to be just enough to eke out the win, and then you're like, this is a board wipe, basically, right? Like, if I have Vader on the board, and I've already buffed him with the TIE Advance to give him 2 experience, he has 7, then this gives him 9. I just get to do 9 damage however I want. I got bad news. That usually wipes the board. And if it doesn't, then Vader just cleans it up with his 2 damage when he swings and then hits things. It's a really great card. So, that's the deck. It's basically a deck that works on these premises. Number 1, play little units early to stall. Number 2, play the cards that give you ramp. Number 3, ramp into big, awesome stuff. And number 4, lots of removing great units. Now, you'll notice there's a whole bunch of cards I don't have in here that you might be like, what? You don't even have Vader's Saber. Here's the deal. I don't want to get 2 for 1. It is very rare when I'm going to put myself in a position where I'm getting 2 for 1. Card advantage is incredibly valuable. Because in this ramp style deck, if I can grind you down to where you're sort of top decking, I'm just killing whatever you play. Another example of something I don't play is Force Choke. Force Choke means I eliminate your guy, you get to replace it by drawing a card. No, I'm not doing that. You don't get to replace your cards. Your cards are gone, friend. Same thing with I Am Your Father. So any of those cards that you might be surprised aren't in there are probably because I don't like 2 for 1s with this deck. I'm not saying all decks shouldn't do that, but this deck that is specifically trying to focus on card advantage, focus on removal, focus on clearing the board. I don't want to give my opponents cards. I don't want to get 2 for 1. So that is my first big Star Wars Unlimited deck that I'm really liking. I call it simply Vader Ramp. Who knows if it'll be good when the full game comes out, but right now it is quite good. If you have not played a ramp deck that you have liked, this is the one. Give it a try, and if you find some other incarnations, let me know. I'd love to hear in the comments below what your build looks like. And as new cards get spoiled, don't be surprised if you look at this video and you're like, Tiny, you do not know what you're talking about. How did you not have X broken card? It wasn't out yet, man. It wasn't out yet. Also, in case you didn't know, this is a website called SWUDB, Star Wars Unlimited Database. Check it out. It's a great site. All right. Well, hopefully this will be the first of many Star Wars Unlimited videos. I'll see you next time, everybody. Have a good one.